Most leaders don't even know the game they're in. They sprint, they struggle, they chase targets as if the finish line is right in front of them. But the truth is, they're playing with the wrong rules on the wrong field for the wrong prize. The world has shifted, the environment has evolved, but many leaders are still clinging to outdated maps of a landscape that no longer exists. And that's why their teams are uninspired. That's why progress feels slow. That's why pressure keeps rising. Because leadership isn't about winning a quarter. It's about understanding the infinite nature of the game. A game driven by purpose, by people, by the courage to adapt, and the humility to learn. Once a leader finally understands the game they're actually in, everything changes. The decisions become clearer, the mission becomes stronger, and the people around them rise with energy and trust. Today's message is not just a reminder, it's a wake-up call. If leaders don't redefine the game now, the game will redefine them. Stop playing to win and start playing to last. Because the moment a man wakes up and realizes life isn't a scoreboard, but an endurance test, everything about how he leads, loves, and shows up begins to transform. Men are often conditioned to chase the quick win, the promotion, the validation, the applause, and in that chase, they forget the deeper game that demands patience, consistency, and emotional strength. The pressure to win fast blinds many men to what matters most, the ability to stay committed, stay grounded, and stay true even when no one is cheering. Women see this pattern clearly, often watching the men in their lives exhaust themselves trying to prove something instead of becoming something. They notice how men push for results, even when the relationship, the family, or the team simply needs presence and understanding. They watch men burn out by sprinting toward every goal, as if life were a series of battles to conquer rather than a long journey to navigate. For many women, the most powerful version of a man isn't the one who wins quickly, but the one who stays steady, calm, honest, and intentional. Men themselves feel this internal conflict more deeply than they admit. There's an unspoken tension between the man they project and the man they truly want to be. The world teaches men to keep score, but their hearts want something more durable, respect that lasts, purpose that endures, and relationships that don't collapse when life gets hard. Once a man starts playing to last instead of to win, he shifts from performance mode to purpose mode. He becomes less reactive, less desperate, and far more influential. Women experience a profound shift too when a man embraces the long game. They feel safer, more connected, and more trusted because a man playing to last isn't constantly competing. He's committed. He doesn't just chase outcomes. He invests in the people around him. He listens. He adapts. He grows. But most importantly, he stops treating leadership, love, and responsibility like events and starts treating them like lifelong missions. This shift changes the dynamic entirely. Men who play to last stop viewing pressure as a threat and start viewing it as training. They recognize that strength isn't proven by winning quickly, but by enduring faithfully. They begin leading from depth, not ego. And in that transformation, they finally discover a version of themselves that isn't fragile, reactive, or afraid, but steady, grounded, and built to go the distance. A leader's first job is not to control the field, but to understand it. Because too often men step into leadership thinking strength comes from dominance rather than insight. Society trains men to solve, to fix, to impose solutions quickly, believing that control equals respect. But the truth is, the most effective leaders are the ones who pause, observe, and truly comprehend the environment they are navigating before making a move. Understanding the field requires humility, patience, and curiosity, qualities that many men are hesitant to embrace because they feel vulnerable showing them. Women notice this hesitation instantly. They see men rushing to take charge without first grasping the complexities around them, trying to exert influence before earning awareness. In relationships, in the workplace, in communities, this rush to control creates friction, misunderstanding, and even isolation. Women recognize that influence is not born from force, but from comprehension, from the ability to read the room, to anticipate consequences, and to act with awareness rather than impulse. The most respected men are not those who dominate conversations or dictate terms. They are the men who understand the context deeply and respond thoughtfully. Men themselves often struggle to step back and absorb the landscape because doing so feels like surrendering authority. Yet real strength emerges when a man shifts from controlling outcomes to comprehending circumstances. When he asks questions before giving answers, when he listens before instructing, he develops foresight, empathy, and resilience. Understanding the field allows a man to predict challenges, navigate conflicts with clarity, and connect with the people around him in ways that brute control never could. It transforms leadership from a performance of power into a practice of guidance. This approach also reshapes how women experience men in positions of leadership or influence. A man who prioritizes understanding over control demonstrates emotional intelligence and reliability. He models patience and reflection, showing that decisions are made not for ego, but for alignment with purpose and values. Women sense when men are acting from awareness versus impulsive ambition, and they gravitate toward the former because it creates trust, stability, and collaboration. The energy in a room changes when a man leads by insight rather than assertion, inviting others to contribute rather than merely comply. The field itself is never static, and neither is the human mind. Men who embrace the practice of understanding first recognize that leadership is a dance, not a battle. They learn to read the currents before setting their course, to adjust their approach as circumstances evolve, and to honor the perspectives of those around them. Control may offer temporary victories, but comprehension builds endurance, loyalty, and influence that cannot be forced or faked. If you don't know the rules, pressure will rule you, because men often enter challenges believing that courage alone is enough to succeed. There is a deep-seated belief that strength means acting decisively, that masculinity is proven by handling every situation head-on without hesitation. But when a man steps into a game without understanding its rules, he is vulnerable to making missteps, to burning out, and to losing the trust of those who depend on him. Pressure becomes the invisible opponent, controlling his decisions, his emotions, and ultimately the outcomes he thought he could master. Women see this struggle with remarkable clarity. They notice when a man reacts to tension instead of responding with insight. They watch frustration, impatience, or anxiety take over, and they understand that it isn't weakness, it's unpreparedness. Women recognize that real leadership and confidence come not from facing every moment as a battle, but from knowing the terrain, the stakes, and the dynamics at play. They value men who pause to understand the context before acting, because those men respond to pressure with awareness rather than panic, making trust and collaboration possible. Men often underestimate how much pressure influences their psychology. The internal voice that demands perfection, speed, and control can cloud judgment, skew priorities, and lead to impulsive choices. When men fail to recognize the rules, the norms, the hidden dynamics, the subtle expectations, they are trapped in reactive mode, constantly trying to regain control instead of guiding it. Understanding the structure of the game allows a man to anticipate challenges rather than simply endure them, to make decisions with confidence rather than out of desperation, and to maintain composure when everything feels like it's closing in. Pressure is relentless, and it exposes the cracks in unprepared minds. Women experience the effects of this pressure indirectly, in relationships, partnerships, and workplaces. When a man lets stress dictate his behavior, it creates tension, misunderstanding, and distance. But when he understands the rules, pressure transforms from a tyrant into a guide, revealing opportunities to adapt, grow, and lead with integrity. Women gravitate toward men who demonstrate this mastery because it signals reliability, clarity, and emotional maturity, qualities that foster connection and respect. The rules of the game are written and often shift without warning. Men who succeed over the long term are those who invest time to observe, learn, and internalize the principles before they are tested. They recognize that pressure is inevitable, but it only dominates those who act blindly. Knowledge, awareness, and preparation create freedom under stress, turning pressure into a catalyst for growth rather than a force that dictates life. Purpose is the only strategy that survives change, because men often invest so much energy in plans, tactics, and achievements that they forget why they started in the first place. Life is unpredictable. Circumstances shift, and what worked yesterday may crumble tomorrow. Men who build their identity around short-term wins or external validation discover too late that results are fragile and fleeting. True resilience comes not from strategies that can be copied or markets that can be dominated, but from a deep sense of purpose that guides every decision, every action, and every relationship. No matter how the world shifts around them, women notice when a man operates from purpose versus when he chases outcomes. They sense the difference between someone who acts from alignment and someone who reacts from obligation or ego. Men who lead with purpose inspire confidence because their direction is anchored in something far greater than circumstance. Women feel stability in their presence, even amid chaos, because purpose provides a North Star that doesn't move when the winds of change blow. It is this consistency that cultivates trust, loyalty, and respect. Men, however, often struggle to articulate or even recognize their purpose. Societal expectations teach them to focus on achievement and success as measures of worth, creating tension between what they do and WH. They do it. Without a guiding purpose, stress, pressure, and uncertainty can dominate their minds, causing decisions to be reactive and relationships to suffer. Purpose acts as a lens, filtering priorities and clarifying action. When a man understands why he does what he does, he can navigate ambiguity with confidence, adapt without losing himself, and maintain integrity when faced with challenges that would overwhelm those who operate without direction. Women experience the impact of a man's purpose in profound ways. Purpose-driven men are present, attentive, and intentional in their interactions. They listen not just to respond, but to understand, and they lead in ways that elevate rather than control. This intentionality fosters emotional safety and mutual growth. When a man operates without purpose, relationships feel transactional, work feels exhausting, and influence is temporary. Purpose transforms effort into meaning, tasks into mission, and pressure into opportunity. Change is inevitable, unpredictable, and often relentless. Men who anchor themselves in purpose endure, because purpose cannot be undermined by trends, failures, or external pressures. It becomes the internal compass that informs choices, sustains momentum, and shapes character. Women see this stability, feel it, and respond to it because it reflects a man who is reliable, self-aware, and committed to something beyond immediate results. Purpose allows a man to navigate life not as a series of reactive maneuvers, but as a coherent, confident journey with direction, clarity, and impact. Teams don't fail. Leaders fail to see the bigger game because men are often conditioned to focus on immediate results rather than long-term impact. There is a constant pressure to perform, to hit targets, to demonstra strength through achievement. And in that tunnel vision, the larger picture, the culture, the values, the sustainability is easily overlooked. Men step into leadership believing that success is measured by short-term wins, but the truth is that lasting influence comes from understanding the broader ecosystem and the unseen forces that shape outcomes. When a leader misses the bigger game, the team's potential is never fully realized, not because they lack skill or commitment, but because guidance lacks vision. Women notice this gap instantly. They see men directing energy toward tasks without appreciating the emotional, relational, and cultural dynamics at play. They watch as frustration grows in teams, morale dips, and alignment falters. Women understand intuitively that leadership is not just about results. It's about context, clarity, and connection. When a man leads with insight into the bigger game, he creates an environment where people feel understood, valued, and empowered. They don't just follow instructions. They engage, contribute, and rise to challenges because the mission feels clear and meaningful. Men themselves often fail to step back because doing so feels counterintuitive to the societal narrative of masculinity. Strength is often mistaken for control, decisiveness, or visible achievement, rather than foresight, empathy, and reflection. When leaders focus solely on the immediate pressures, they respond reactively instead of proactively. They prioritize tasks over people, metrics over meaning, and speed over sustainability. The team suffers not from incompetence, but from a lack of strategic vision. Men who recognize this pattern and shift to seeing the bigger game begin to lead with confidence, patience, and adaptability, creating influence that endures. Beyond any single project or crisis, women experience the consequences of short-sighted leadership in both professional and personal spaces. When a man cannot see beyond the immediate, relationships feel transactional and collaboration is strained. Women respond to leaders who understand the broader narrative because such men anticipate needs, mediate conflicts, and cultivate trust. Their influence is felt not through commands, but through the stability, clarity, and alignment they provide. Leadership that perceives the bigger game inspires commitment and fosters resilience, while leadership that ignores it triggers anxiety, disengagement, and confusion. Understanding the bigger game requires humility, patience, and curiosity, qualities that men often resist but that women intuitively recognize as strength. It is about reading patterns, predicting consequences, and aligning purpose with action. Teams mirror the vision of their leaders. When leaders see the forest, not just the trees, they cultivate people who are not just capable, but motivated and resilient. Pressure becomes a shared challenge rather than a source of breakdown. And the organization or family thrives because leadership perceives the complexity that others often miss. Adaptation isn't a skill. It's the new leadership standard because men are often taught to be rigid, decisive, and unshakable. Yet the world rewards those who bend without breaking. Society tells men that strength is demonstrated through consistency, control, and unyielding resolve, but these traits alone no longer define effective leadership. Circumstances change faster than ever. Challenges are unpredictable, and the landscape is complex. Men who cling to fixed strategies or old ways of thinking find themselves outpaced, frustrated, and increasingly irrelevant. True leadership now requires the courage to adjust, to learn, and to pivot without losing sight of purpose. Women recognize adaptation in a man almost instinctively. They notice when a man reacts with flexibility instead of rigidity, when he responds to challenges with thoughtfulness rather than defensiveness. A man who adapts signals not weakness, but intelligence and emotional awareness. Women are drawn to leaders who can shift course without losing integrity because it demonstrates confidence, humility, and resilience simultaneously. Adaptation reassures them that the man is engaged, attentive, and capable of leading through uncertainty, whether in business, family, or community. Men themselves often struggle with the internal conflict that adaptation demands. Ego, pride, and societal expectations push them toward fixed solutions and visible control, yet reality rarely conforms to certainty. Pressure mounts when plans fail, and without the ability to adapt, men respond with frustration, aggression, or withdrawal. Understanding that adaptation is not a fallback, but a standard reframes the challenge entirely. It becomes a deliberate choice to observe, assess, and adjust, turning obstacles into opportunities for growth, innovation, and connection. Adaptation transforms a reactive mindset into one of strategic foresight. Women experience the effects of adaptive leadership directly, particularly in relationships and collaborative environments. Men who fail to adapt often frustrate those around them, creating tension, misalignment, and emotional distance. Conversely, men who embrace adaptation cultivate trust, respect, and partnership. They communicate openly, adjust expectations thoughtfully, and remain approachable even when circumstances shift dramatically. Adaptation is not just about changing tactics. It's about listening, empathizing, and aligning actions with evolving realities, which resonates profoundly with women who value emotional intelligence as much as strategic competence. Adaptation also reshapes men's relationship with pressure, uncertainty, and failure. Men who view challenges through the lens of adaptability no longer fear change, they anticipate it. They remain grounded because their confidence stems from principles and purpose, not rigid routines or temporary victories. Pressure becomes a guide rather than a threat, signaling where flexibility is needed and where steadfastness still matters. Adaptation encourages reflection, learning, and recalibration, enabling men to maintain composure, inspire their teams, and cultivate influence that endures through turbulence. In today's world, the ability to adapt defines the difference between surviving and thriving. Men who embrace this standard recognize that leadership is less about command and more about navigation. Women respond to this dynamic because adaptive leaders create environments where collaboration, trust, and creativity flourish. Adaptation is no longer optional. It is the expectation, the measure of strength, and the defining characteristic of those who lead with relevance, insight, and enduring impact.